Where's Fielder?
He's gone to the dogs.
Well, it's the old coon hunter Steve Fielder one more time coming at you with the Gone to the Dogs podcast. That name, Gone to the Dogs, came from my mother. She used to look out the kitchen window and see my dad's dogs out there in the pen, always more than he agreed that he would have, and say, Homan, we've gone to the dogs. But anyway, we're going to go to the dogs tonight with a fella that I met, I guess, back in September of last year or somewhere thereabout. And he's a young coon hunter that I've been wanting to get on the podcast for a long time because I don't know when I've met a guy that hunts anymore or loves it anymore. Kesten Jessee, how you doing, brother?
No, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Well, I am what I am. It ain't pretty, but it's still kicking. My buddy Lindell Price said another day, without my toes pointing up, I guess I'm okay. Kesten, it's good to have you on the podcast, man. When was it actually? Do you remember when you got? I think I will tell our listeners this. You contacted me, I believe, something about a puppy. Well, I'll let you tell that story.
Yeah, I contacted you around this time last year, and I got out of coon hunting. I had a night shift job, been on night shift for like 6 years. I hadn't got to hunt much, sold out all the coon hunting stuff, got into coyote hunting. And I worked with a guy, and he bear hunted a lot, coon hunted a lot. He always aggravated me, wanted me to get another dog, and I never would because I knew I didn't have time to hunt it, being on night shift. Well, I started my own business, and just sort of opened some time up. And I kept telling myself in the back of my mind, don't go back into this, don't go back into this. I started listening to this podcast while I was at work, and I couldn't hold it off anymore. I had to get another puppy, and I was listening to you on the podcast, and I messaged you and asked you if you knew where any well-bred pups were, and that's when you led me to the puppy I got today.
Yeah, and I believe at that time I referred you up to my good friend Randy Smith in Pennsylvania, didn't I?
Yeah, and bought a pup off Randy, and you went all the way up there and picked it up and brought it back to him.
Well, that was just an excuse for me to get to run up there and hunt a night or two with Randy. I always look forward to that. At that time, my mother was still living there in nearby Tazewell. I guess that's, 30 miles maybe from you, something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to say 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, I being at my brother's there and all, it gave me a good excuse to run up to Pennsylvania, and I did. I went up and hunted and picked up this nice pup, and he's out of Cooney Valley Pack of Sean Burden's and Randy Smith's Lone Pine Fran female. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah, well, before we get into talking about this dog you named Clyde, and we've added a Bonnie to the mix. I think I've heard that somewhere before, Bonnie and Clyde. But anyway, let's get just a bit of background about you. Where were you born? How old are you? Tell me about your family and just a little bit of background.
I'm from Lebanon, Virginia, and I got 3 kids. I got a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old getting ready to turn 4, and a 7-year-old. And my wife, and I run my own business, a lawn and landscape business, and pretty much hunt 6-7 nights a week. That pretty much sums it up.
Well, that's true. I know a lot of times we talk just about every day, and you're just getting in at dark and taking care of your kennel work out there and stuff, and grab a bite to eat, and off the woods you go. You are how we used to say, you're ate up with it, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I go every chance I get. I mean, it's regularly 6 nights a week. I might take a night off if it's raining or one of the kids got something they want to do or something like that. But other than that, I'm in the woods.
Well, I think that's what makes dogs. And as we talk here today for our listeners, I think they're going to see the kind of dedication and determination that you have for the sport. And you cannot underplay that. You can't make excuses for not hunting a good young dog. No matter how that dog, how well it's bred, and how many wins its parents have, and all of that sort of thing, that dog is not going to make a dog sitting in a pen or on the end of a chain. And
That's
I think,
exactly right.
yeah, and I think that's where a lot of guys make a mistake. All right, well, let's. I came back from Pennsylvania, had never met you face to face. We'd talked several times on the phone. And I met you there at the local Hardee's in Tazewell, and you picked your pup up. Kind of tell us a little bit about Clyde, how he was when you picked him up, how old he was, and some of those things from the very earliest days. What I want to accomplish with this podcast today, Kesten, if we can, is to try to help people out there that have puppies. They're trying to start them. And, maybe the way that you started Clyde is a little bit unorthodox because you didn't use another dog to start him. And just kind of lay that out a little bit for me, as much as you can remember from the very earliest days.
All right. I picked him up off you, brought him home. I kept him right here around the house, played with him in the yard, just got him used to me. He stayed in the house with us. The kids played with him, just really buddied up with him. He wasn't but 4 months old, just turned 4 months old when I got him. And from the week I got him, every night during that, it was around this time last year, every night, me and my old girl, we'd just take him on walks through the woods, down the creek, places where there's coons. And we went every night and just walking him. And it just sort of progresses, they go from,
well, how did he act at first when you started on those walks with him?
Yeah, they go from walking right with you, and then, a month down the road, they're venturing out 100 yards, 150 yards, another month, 200 yards, 250 yards. He was 7 months old. He started striking and running tracks, and he would get to trees, and he would just sit there, wouldn't tree, wouldn't bark. And I never would go to him, just, didn't really know what he was doing. And then I got to thinking about it, he's probably treeing coons and just not barking up. And so I started going to him off a Garmin, and he would always have a coon. I never would give it to him or nothing like that. He wasn't treeing on it. And went for a long time like that before he finally treed his first one.
Well, let's wait right here. Let me interrupt you now. You walked this pup in the woods for roughly how long before we got to this point you're talking about right now?
I'm going to say 6 nights a week for 3 months straight. He was in the woods.
And
walking.
And in that 3 months' time, he had really never done anything other than getting away from you and going stationary, and you found that he was under a coon but not barking at it.
Yeah, I mean, the type of things he was picking up early on like that was he crossing creeks, coming through fences, getting used to being around cows, just all that stuff. And, I would leave the house knowing I wasn't going to tree a coon, and sometimes it was real aggravating, You didn't really particularly want to go, especially when it started getting cold. But just like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you can't make a dog by throwing it in the kennel and leaving it.
Well, you certainly had the patience and the determination. Now, let's break right here a little bit to go back to your earliest experiences with coon hunting. What do you remember about that? Because you said that you'd gotten away from it, got into coyote hunting and all of that sort of thing. But what are some of those early experiences you remember?
Yeah, I started coon hunting actually with a neighbor of mine when I was like 8 years old. Uh, he was an older guy, and I would go with him probably 3, 4 nights a week. And school nights, mom would let me go with him, and we'd get back pretty early. But I always remember Fridays in school. That's all I'd think about all day long was getting out of school because I knowed I was going to hunt from dark to daylight that Friday night into Saturday, and went from there. And we ended up moving. And when we moved, is when I got my first dog because we moved away from him. I didn't have nobody to go with, and I bought a dog off a local breeder. And at that time, I was probably 10 years old. I didn't know nothing about starting a dog, and I bought a female walker dog, and she just run loose all the time. And she got to where she was just getting treed, and we come home from something one night. I was walking up on the porch, and I heard her treed, and I went to her, and she had a coon. And Lord, you talking about excited. I was excited. 10 years old, dog treated coon. Shot the coon out to her, brought her straight home like I really had something, and throwed her in the kennel, and then started hunting her every night. And to this day, that's probably the best dog I've ever owned. And when I started putting her up, I was hunting her every night, 10 years old, 11 years old, by myself. And then I started hunting with another older guy.
Okay, let me interrupt you right here, folks, because I know that there's probably some skeptics out there that are saying, wait a minute, this kid's 10 years old. He's out there hunting by himself and training this dog and catching coons with him. But I don't think they understand that, were you basically raised in town or out in the country?
I was raised pretty much on a dairy farm.
Yeah. So you were around farming and animals and the woods and all that as long as you can remember, right?
Yeah. From the time I was in seventh grade, I actually had a full-time job on a dairy farm.
From seventh grade on, full-time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's certainly where your work ethic came from, I'm sure, and you did that kind of work for quite a while, and then was it from there that you moved on to being a coal miner?
Yeah, I went into the mines, and I done that, and that just didn't leave enough time for me to, hunt, be with my kids, be with my wife, divide the time, and I love those things too much to, spend all my time doing that, and I know I had to do something. Come up with something to do to free some time up so I could hunt and still spend time with my family and work.
Well, before we recorded or started recording this podcast, you and I were talking a little bit of preparation, and you said something I think is really profound, and it's probably maybe the excuse that a lot of people have, and it's probably a legitimate excuse. But what did you tell me about successful people in the hunting world?
You gotta hunt. You gotta hunt, and I feel that the dog will teach you more than you can teach the dog if you'll just pay attention to the dog. And I think
you told me about, what was it you told me about time?
Time will tell. I always say, everything takes time. To be good at anything in life, you got to have time to invest. You got to have. That's one thing you can't replace is time. Deer hunting, coon hunting, turkey hunting, coyote hunting. The person that puts the most time in, it's going to be the successful person.
Well, the irony of that is you let too much time go away before you retire, like I did. And then, you have the time, but you don't have the legs.
Yeah,
or you don't have, the body ages, the mind stays young. The mind wants to go every night, but the body won't support it. But I think you've certainly been a great example of that, and I think those listeners out there, if you're going to invest in training a coonhound pup, and do it the way you've done it, you're definitely going to have the time to invest in it. And that's one of the things about coon hunting that makes it possible for a lot of us. and down through the years, that was my case, is that you work a day job, but then you have to put in that investment in time at night out there with that dog.
That's right. And, I'll step back here and say this too. Talking about the coon hunting when I was 10 years old, and it wasn't like my parents was, letting me go way down the road or nothing. I'm talking about we had land behind the house. I was hunting behind the house. I wasn't shooting no coons out or nothing like that. They wasn't turning me loose with a gun at 10 years old. I was just going out there treeing coons, seeing coons, recutting off trees. I just loved to hunt. I mean, killing was never no big deal to me, really.
Well, very much like my experience, just loving to be out in the woods with the dog, I suppose. So anyway, so what was the breeding on this dog that you said was the best that you ever had?
There's a guy here in town. Everybody around here used to hunt his dogs, and it was Red Eagle Casey was the sire to it. And honestly, Steve, I can't remember what the female was that it was out of.
Yeah, but it was a walker dog then, right?
It was a walker dog, yeah, female.
Female,
and,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I guess that's kind of why you wanted, when you started looking for a pup, you kind of wanted to get a walker then, didn't you?
Yeah, that's all I've ever hunted. That's really all I've ever been around. That's, it's the most common thing around it, which it's the most common thing anywhere, I believe, anymore.
Yeah, we're getting, folks, we're doing this via cell phone, and we're getting just a little bit of distortion there, but I believe it's still legible, and we'll go on. Okay, so Clyde, now you spent this 3 months with Clyde, taking him, let's say a minimum of 6 nights a week out there just walking in the woods. We go through this stage where he's treeing, but he's not barking at it. Where did he go from there?
Well, that's when I actually took another dog with him, and this wasn't like an every night deal. This was a one-time deal. Took another dog with him, and treated coon, and he done the same thing. The other dog actually backed him. He went in there. He wasn't saying nothing. The other dog goes in there, starts treeing. So I tie Clyde back, and I just start petting this other dog. I mean, I get this other dog going good, and Clyde just starts barking, and got him off that, and come back to the house. And I want to say it was 2 nights later, took Clyde out by himself, and he's treated his first coon, and he's been treating him ever since.
Yeah, that idea of tying a dog back and not letting him or her be part of the action it works wonders for young dogs. And, this podcast gets a lot of correspondence, a lot of questions from younger hunters. And I kind of laugh, Kesten, because I know it didn't take me very long with you to realize that you knew a lot more about coon hunting than you were letting on, because you asked all kinds of questions. I mean, It was almost every day as we talked in the evenings or whatever, and you'd say, now I want to ask you this. I want to ask you something about that. What do you have to say about that?
I think that there's something to learn from everybody. If you just ask questions and don't ask them just to ask them and take notes on them, try them. Just because they don't sound like they'll work don't mean they won't work. Everybody does things different, just something else to put in the back of your head, to try one day. Even people that you go hunting with and maybe you don't think they got the best dogs, they don't, that there's still something that you can learn from them. There's something to learn from everybody. Your way ain't always the only way.
Well, we're going to talk about your visit to your first trip to Autumn Oaks here a little bit, and we'll kind of get back to that aspect right there. But again, with the focus of our podcast today being, trying to help somebody out there. When you were going all those nights, those 3 months of walking Clyde and walking him, what was going through your head? Did you ever get discouraged? or were you always optimistic about what was going to happen?
No, I mean, definitely, it's in the back of your mind. I mean, who wouldn't go out there and walk for 3 months and not get discouraged? I mean, there was nights I was out there, and man, I got aggravated several nights, and but I think a lot of that comes back to when I was younger. That Clyde is the first dog I've started without using another dog.
Right.
I've always started dogs using other dogs. I've always hunted with other people, older guys, and they always had great dogs. So my measuring stick was sort of way up there. I know what I wanted. I was just learning as I go about how to get it without another dog. And there was several nights I got really discouraged. Thought about quitting. Thought about what in the world have I got myself into. I knew I shouldn't have got back into this. But just like anything, like we talked about earlier, time, any good thing in life takes time.
Well, certainly. And, I think back, this doesn't have anything to do with coon hunting, but Abraham Lincoln, many would say, was the greatest president of this country. And in fact, I guess he brought us through that horrible Civil War and all that. But how many times did he fail for public office? He'd run for office, he'd get beat, time after time. And then, but he stuck with it, I think, because he loved the country and he felt that he could change it or help it somehow. So anyway, a word to those out there that are listening and are attempting to train a pup. Patience and time is so important. And I don't think we can overstate this idea of patience. We're going to talk about another Walker dog here in a minute that's kind of tried your patience and mine. but we want to talk about her as well. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here, and doing a poor job of it, is what the people out there that get a puppy and think, well, this is a well-bred puppy, he ought to be doing like those I see on the internet, training his own coon at 5 months old, winning night hunts, and making night champion before he's a year old, and yada, yada, yada. They're not all like that, and they're not all cut out to be those quick starters. I don't want to get away from Clyde. Let's keep the progression going with this Clyde dog, who is now, I think, just turned 15 months old, right?
Yeah, he just turned 15 months old, and he's treed a little over 100 coons by himself. He's been in the woods a total of maybe 6 times with another dog, 7 times tops.
Right. Yeah, and I know I've been with Clyde. I've seen him in action. Let's pick him up there where he started to tree coons on his own. What did you see, and how did he progress up to where he is now?
Okay, well, the first thing that I noticed about Clyde, and it's one of the biggest faults I got to him, is he's a ball mouth tree dog. And some people like it, some people hate it, some people don't care. I don't particularly prefer it, but he was, at the beginning, he was not a hard tree dog. He would tree, you would get to him, he would stop, he would mill around the tree. His mind wasn't all the way in it. And so I just started, when he would tree, I would tie him up and I would let him tree. And he started treeing harder. Even after he treed probably 20 coons, sometimes you turn him loose, he wouldn't go 100 yards. He would turn and come back to you. Like we was talking about earlier, just time, just kept hunting him. Now you turn him loose, 10 minutes, he's 700 yards tree somewhere. And it's all goes back to time, how much time you put into it.
Well, there again, I've often thought, we think about bird dogs and retrievers and and all that, and how much the trainer is involved with that dog's progress and this, and we're training. I've always believed with coon hounds, it's mostly genetics, okay? The dog's really got to be bred to do it. And there's a lot of little side roads that you can get off on the subject of genetics because, you get into things about how does the dog hunt? What kind of nose does he have? Does he move around good? Does he try to find a coon? When he trees, does he stay treed? Is he a one-bark tree dog, or does it take him a while to settle in? You bring up the subject of whether or not the dog is a chopper or ball mouth tree dog. I will say right here that Clyde does have a distinct locate. There's no question about it when he comes treed, is there?
No, when he comes treed, he's treed. He's not leaving, and he's going to have a coon.
That's what I like about this young dog, and he certainly will go hunting. And I am so appreciative, Kesten, of the fact that you send me videos and things when you're out there hunting. And there's no question the dog will go hunting for sure. And I know the other night you were hunting him. He went over a mountain or over the top a long way. I don't know. But there's no question that he'll go hunting. And you don't live on tabletop flat country where you hunt.
No.
Describe it a little bit. It's a good time to.
There's two different types of terrains. There's sort of rolling hills, but you can also get into some rough stuff like mountain laurel. You get in Clinch Mountain, big boulders, rock breaks coming out of the mountain. So I mean, you pretty much pick and choose, but there ain't nothing flat. There's some stuff that's not too bad, just rolling hills. But then there's also some rough stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, he pretty much takes any kind of terrain that you put him in. It doesn't seem to bother him much, does it?
No, you can come down here and get him out of the kennel any night you want to hunt. You're going to treat him no matter where you turn him loose. Never hunted him outside of Virginia. Don't know how that'll go, but hopefully one day.
Oh, we're gonna take care of that, I'm sure. This thing about it is accuracy. It's just we were talking about that a little bit before we recorded, and there's been very few trees that you didn't find a coon in when he treed, right?
Oh yeah, very, very well. I'm gonna say I know out of over 100 trees, there's been 4 trees that I haven't found a coon in, and he's treed 2 den trees, and he has treed 2 possums when he was a lot younger.
Yeah, and we talked about the fact, I know the other night you told me, you said, he treed and I didn't find the coon, but I'm going to call that, slick tree number 4 or some such. I don't know what you told me. But
yeah.
You're not very forgiving on those leafy trees, are you?
No, if I don't see eyes, it's slick. I mean, the only way I call it circle or something like that is if there's a obvious hole. I feel like if you can see the tree good enough to tell there ain't a hole in it, you ought to be able to see it.
Well, I think that when someone takes the sport as seriously as you do, and here again, what I'm reminded of is you're out there one-on-one with this dog. Now, we talk about electronics, and you do put a Garmin collar on the dog, but you've never had a TT-15 on that dog, have you?
The dog has never been shocked in his life. I can just scold him. I can get on to him. I can talk rough to him, and he listens. He minds. And going back, he was talking about the training and the natural genetics. If there's anything that I've taught Clyde, it's, to come back when I holler. No, he knows what no means. Other than that, I've not taught the dog nothing. The dog's taught me.
Well, he's obviously a smart. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, I've just gave him opportunity. He's taught me. I've just put him in woods with coons. I mean, that's all. That's all there is to it. That's all I did.
Well, I think that's an important point to make, and we kind of, I guess I was kind of joking with you, but when you and I, there's kind of a history too, because you hunted the cruise dog for me for a while, and we were disappointed in Cruz. There's no denying it. I enjoyed Cruz so much up to a point when he began missing, and you had him there, and it was pretty obvious to you that he was missing, and all that. But we talked about a lot of things about these dogs, and about the accuracy and all. And I had a point there that I was going to make, and it's escaped me for just a few minutes here. But from the get-go, when you and I started talking, you have aspirations someday of getting into the night hunts and hunting this dog in the night hunts. But where do you stand right now, in your opinion, with Clyde, and where you are on the journey as far as him being a dog that you want to take to town?
Okay. I've been on 2 night hunts my whole life. I didn't hunt neither one. I spectated. And one was a youth hunt here at home, and one was at Autumn Oaks when Lane Denny took me out. And that's the only experiences I got besides watching it on social media. And I just feel like that maybe by next spring, I'll start putting him in some hunts. I just want him to be 100% before I take him, because I feel like there'll be less confrontation taking a dog that's ready than having to try to argue to get him through. I mean, I'm not the type that's going to argue. If I go, I'm going to be ready to go. And I need to hunt him with some other stuff. Like I said, he's not been in the woods with nothing but himself. So I'm going to start hunting with some strange dogs, some strange places through this kill season. And hopefully next spring is when I'll start taking him to some hunts.
Well, again, that word of patience, I think, comes in right there, because, a lot of guys would have had him in hunts already. And I may have been one of those guys, because I think that in many ways he's certainly ready. He certainly is going to be competitive, and he's going to break some hearts. There's no question about it in my mind. But there again, you're being methodical about it. You're taking your time with him. You have goals, and you're willing to put the time in. I just think that you've got really a nice young dog there. And I think evidenced by the fact of living in Southwest Virginia and being able to, with confidence, go out there and turn him loose and know that you're going to tree a coon. And it's something, especially in that country. And I think any listeners that we have that are from that part of the world knows how what an accomplishment that is. All right. Well, I don't know that we have. What do you see right now with Clyde? Things you'd like to change about him, if you could.
If I could sit down and make a list of things to change about him, I would definitely change the way he trees, the ball mouth. I would definitely change that. When you first recut him, or when you first cut him out of the truck, he has a little bit of downtime. He might run out there 200 yards and mill around for a few minutes, and then he'll go on. Some nights you go cut him loose, and I mean, he's just farther the faster. He moves around real good. And but from what I've seen, I went and hunted with a guy the other night, and he had another young dog. And from what I've seen, I'm gonna have to start hunting him with some other stuff to get him used to other dogs. Because he wanted to play with the other dog. I mean, he wasn't interested in going hunting for the first 30 minutes, and then finally he went on and he treed and had 2 coons. But stuff like that.
Okay, well, I think we can maybe, I don't want to make excuses for him, but I guess I am. You've got a dog at the house that's been in heat the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, sitting right beside of it.
Right beside of it. This young dog was actually a pup, wasn't she? About 5 months old or so.
I believe she was just 4 months old, and she was also a female.
A female. And naturally, when you take a young dog along with a pup that wants to play, that puppy's going to come out in that young dog because it just now turned 15 months old. Clyde still got some, I'm sure, some puppy ways.
Oh yeah.
We are led to believe on social media that, that by that age they ought to be walking on water and talking on TV. But that's just not realistic, is it? So
No, it's definitely not.
yeah.
And you can't expect him. I mean, I wouldn't say you can't expect a dog to, not want to play with another puppy, especially if it's the only dog that he's seen in 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and I think that's going to be probably for you the next phase of his training, if I recall how we've discussed this, is you are going to try to get him out with some strange dogs, different dogs, mix it up and so forth. In training pups years ago, all through the years for me, I used to say I'd take a pup out in the woods and walk him until all the new goes away. In other words, when you first take a little puppy out in the woods, everything's new to him. All the smells are new. A butterfly's the same as a coon or a deer. It's something he hasn't seen before. He's inquisitive. He might chase butterflies. So you continue to take them until they become accustomed to things. And like you mentioned, there you hunt around the farms there and the livestock that's there and all these things. And another thing about Clyde that we haven't mentioned is, and he strayed a little bit, but he hasn't been junky at all, has he? Or pretty much not.
No, he's not. And, I can think of 2 times that he's run a deer. And I got onto him the first time, and I want to say he was probably 8 months old when he done it. And it was just off sight. He ran it straight across the field, never even opened on it, just looking at it. And he ran it right by me. And the second time was just the other night, and I don't know what caused it. And he ran one right, the guy I was hunting with, he ran it right past us. But it was off sight. As soon as it bounced over in the woods, he was done with it.
Mm-hmm.
More or less, I think he was just trying to figure out what it was.
And the way you corrected him was just with your voice, right?
Just hollered at him, yeah. He minds good.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that, him minding, and the older he gets, he's sort of getting hard-headed on coming back to you when you holler at him. But I think the biggest part of that, him minding me, coming back from me and my kids spending so much time with him staying in the house with us. The dog stayed in the house with us all winter long. The dog's never used the bathroom in the house. And that's something else I can say about Clyde. Around the house, down here in the kennel now, you never hear him bark. You look down there any time during the daytime. He don't come out of his house during the daytime. He lays right there in that dog house. The only time you'll see him out of that house is if you come down here and holler at him, or it's dark, or he sees a flashlight up there and he thinks that I'm going to let the tailgate down to go hunt.
All right. Now there's something to be said there. When you first got him at 4 months old, he was pretty vocal in the kennel, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, wouldn't shut up. Yeah. He barked, and that's part of the reason why he ended up being in the house for a little while.
Yeah, he just wanted to be around his peeps instead of being out there in that kennel. Well, there again, we can't overstress that enough, Kesten. That it's a process. When I wrote my book, Gone to the Dogs: A Coon Hunter's Journey. And my friend Heath Heights kind of picked up on the word journey for his podcast over there. And Heath lives there in Virginia, probably a couple hours from you, something like that. But anyway, it is a journey, one step at a time with these dogs. And things change with them. And the dog that you see at 4 months old is not going to be the dog you're going to have at 14 months old or 24 months old or 48 months old. They're going to make progress and go if they're bred right, and he certainly is. Well, listeners out there, I know you're sitting here listening to Kesten talk. There's a lot of you, and probably most of you, that would love to have a young hound that you can go out to the kennel, load him up, drive out to a place where you know there's apt to be coons, unsnap that dog, and see him go hunting on his own without any help, get struck, get treed, and walk up to that tree and see eyes. Now, at his age, you can, the Las Vegas, the odds on a dog like Clyde would be, pretty convincing that you're going to see coon eyes when you walk up there. And to me, I think that's amazing. And I think it is two things. One is his breeding, and two is your determination, your ability as a hunter to go out there and put him in the position where those genetics can take over and he can do what he was bred to do. And that's the formula. I think that's a winning formula when it comes to young dogs. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And it's just like going back to the first dog I ever had, I was telling you about. I sat here and I told you that I didn't teach Clyde nothing. He taught me. And that's just like the first dog I ever had. I told you probably the best dog I've ever had. And, if you remember, I was telling you, I didn't teach her nothing either. She ran loose around the house. I heard her treat. I went to her, started putting her in the kennel. She taught herself. And same way with Clyde. The only difference is where I live now, I can't leave him loose. I just took him every night and let him run.
Okay.
So, two of the best dogs I ever had, that's what they got in common. Completely different bloodlines, but they got the same common thing, just good genetics.
Well, plus you hunted them and you gave them a chance. And okay, we're going to leave Clyde for a minute, unless you can think of something else we ought to discuss about him before we go. Can you?
Well, I could back to how smart he is. I mean, this is some stuff that the kids taught him. I mean, he shakes your hand, he sits, he'll lay down. As far as kennel manners go, this might not mean much to some people, but it does to me. And it might be where I hunt so much, and he knows he's getting hunted every night. But a lot of dogs in the kennel, they'll make a mess out of their kennel. And I can honestly say that Clyde's kennel, I can't tell you the last time I sprayed his side out. I mean, he don't even use the bathroom in the kennel. I mean, he's house trained. He waits till night when we go hunting before he uses the bathroom. I mean, he's just smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And all the best dogs that I've had down through the years, and most hunters will agree, were smart dogs. That's an element that you really have to have. If that pup is not smart enough to process the training or the opportunities that you're giving him, you're just beating your head against a brick wall. And go ahead.
There's another thing that just hit me, and some people might not believe this, but I can take him and I can get ready to turn him loose, and I can walk him to the bottom of a ridge and get ready to unsnap him, and you can watch him. You unsnap him, he'll run 50 yards, he'll stop, he'll throw his head up there, and if that wind is blowing down that ridge toward the bottom, he'll shoot down the bottom of that ridge and run the bottom of that ridge. If that wind is blowing up that ridge, he'll get to the top of that ridge and go at the top of that ridge. And I've never hunted with a dog that knows how to play the wind like that.
I see. Well, that is kind of unusual because you would like to think, well, he's going to go with his nose in the wind, but he's going to where he thinks the wind's carrying the scent, I suppose.
Yeah, like the specific places that I hunt, your predominant winds, it's more of a crosswind. He can hunt a crosswind. He don't always got to have it in his face. I mean, he's smart.
Well, that goes with all the good ones, or our smart ones, that's for sure. All right. Now, you and I took on a project together after what I've really enjoyed our friendship, Kesten, and the times that we spend on the phone and talking the dogs, and I call it productive time because I think you learn things and I learn things definitely when I talk to you. And a while back, I don't even remember when, I bought a half interest in a Trackman Seaman puppy from Randy Smith. And the first owner of the puppy was very, very busy. And the puppy was not showing any signs at that point that she wanted to be a coon dog or any kind of a game treeing dog. She was just pretty much indifferent. But she also hadn't been fooled with very much. So I asked my partner if he would consider selling his half, because I knew that this pup needed to be in the hands of somebody that was really going to put the time in, really going to give the dog the opportunity night after night to be what her genetics said that she should be. And I couldn't think of anybody that fit that description any better than you. So I contacted you, and you correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, but I asked you about, would you be interested? And my partner and I had already discussed it. He was willing to let his half go. And I talked to you about it. And what was your thoughts back then when I asked you about going halves with me on this pup?
I was all for it. Clyde was already treeing his own coons. And yeah, I was all for it. I really thought that it would be a lot easier. I could do it how I done it before I got out of hunting. I could use Clyde to start this puppy. And honestly, I thought it'd be a breeze. I thought it'd be a lot quicker than what it was with Clyde, but it sort of proved me wrong.
Well, yeah. And we won't probably talk about how much we have invested in this pup, but it's a considerable amount. But, it's also, you can't go run down to Missouri to Kurt Arings and breed the Trackman anymore,
That's true,
and to get that opportunity. And, of course, she came from the kennel of Randy Smith and from his Jillian female, who was out of Bone Collector, and his 2016 world champion Biffy Sue female. So she's got the breeding behind her. She's been a bit of a challenge, but I think things are starting to look up. Let's break down, as they say, when we're talking about athletes or ball teams or stuff like that. Let's break down this dog that we've named Lone Pine. What is it? What did we call her? Her name's Bonnie.
Plus them up, Bonnie.
Plus them up, Bonnie. We are being optimistic, right? With that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right. So Bonnie came to your house. Now tell me what you know about Bonnie from that day forward.
I got Bonnie, and she was a little skittish around me. I'm sure, the other people had her since she was just a little puppy. I'm sure she had never been around nobody else. And I want to say that I put her in the kennel, fed her, watered her, and I want to say I kept her for, 2 or 3 days before I put her in the woods. And I just started hunting her with Clyde, and, she wouldn't go nowhere. 20 foot. She wouldn't get out of the light. And I would go into a tree. Clyde would tree. I would go into a tree. You would have to put her on a dog lead and drag her to get her to go with you. I don't know what caused it, but she's scared to death of another dog barking. And basically, just like we've said before, just time. I took her every night with Clyde. She eventually got to where she'd walk into a tree by herself. She's she started going hunting a little better by herself. She'll get out there 200-300 yards, which ain't real far, but it's a long way from where she started. And she's actually, I've seen her run a deer. I've heard her run some tracks. Deer's not exactly target game, but it's better than nothing for a start. And then here recently, she finally started treeing, and then she came in heat. I mean, just as soon as she started, she came in heat. And,
That's the way they'll do you, folks. These females, and of course, they're well bred. You want to keep them intact because you're hoping they're going to bring you your next world beater. But yeah. So she's been in heat. In fact, I think as we're recording this podcast here, which will, by the way, air on September 26th, and it's really I'll put in a little plug here is my anniversary podcast because it's been 1 year since I've been doing this Gone to the Dogs podcast. But at any rate, Bonnie is now out of heat and I guess ready to go to the woods again, isn't she?
Yeah, we actually, well, you did send her collar off. We're waiting on a collar. I ain't much on turning one loose without a collar. Anything could happen. But just as soon as we get that collar back in, she'll be back in the woods, and hopefully she'll pick up where she left off. Because I'm telling you, she got to treeing that night, and then the next morning I come down to feed and she was bleeding. So that's the kind of luck I had.
Yeah. Well, I can remember, and I'll just paint this picture a little bit. And again, it's another page out of that patient's playbook. Is that she went from a dog that, as you said, when Clyde she'd want to go with him, but when he would open, it would scare her, and she'd come running back to you, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't just Clyde. Like here at the house, if the neighbor's dog would bark, she would run in her doghouse. It was any dog that barked. I don't know. She was just scared of other dogs barking.
Yeah, that's. I saw somebody post on social media the other day about a dog. When they first started it seemed to be afraid of the other dogs barking. Now, I had never experienced that with my dogs down through the years, but that was definitely her. And then I can remember you sending me pictures of her where Clyde would be hunting and she would be just out there maybe, I don't know, 150, 200 feet or something like that, just curled up.
Yeah, she'd lay down on you.
Mm-hmm. Now, I suggested to you that you kind of go out there and sit down and maybe take a little keen switch or something. And do you remember that phase?
Yeah, I switched her a few times. I didn't take Clyde, and I took her out by herself, and I just went out there and sat down on a log, and she'd come running up to me, and wanted to sit right there beside me, and I'd take a little switch and switch her and tell her to go on, and that helped some, and she started going, and then I think what really set her off to going was just like I told you what I done with Clyde. With the other dog, he was treeing his coons, wasn't barking up, and I tied him back and I would pick this other dog up. Well, I've done that a few times with Bonnie, and I would drag her into the tree, and I would go down there and I would talk to Clyde. I would pet him up. I'd get him real excited, and I think she started to see, relate that tree with positive things and the barking with positive things. And since then, she used to never bark in the kennel or nothing. Since then, she's a lot more vocal. She'll bark in the kennel every now and then. It's worked wonders on her.
I used to wonder when I was young and see my dad with a litter of puppies, and we had fence posts around my dad's kennel was a little different than some. He kept his dogs at night chained to a stake, a short chain to their doghouse, so they couldn't get out of the pen. He didn't have individual kennel runs for his dogs. So it was just a big pen, really, with a 6 foot or higher fence around it. Anyway, my dad would take the feed bowl at time to feed puppies, and he'd kind of shake it and let them get a good smell of it, and then he'd set it up on the fence post and encourage them to bark. And I think that's a good thing to do with tree dog puppies, to encourage them to bark when they're little, especially to bark at something up over their heads. Because some dogs I've seen, and Bonnie was an example, she didn't have any idea of that concept. She didn't, she really wasn't, it was as if she was afraid to bark.
Yeah.
So I think if you can, and I realize if you have neighbors and all that, but if you get a young puppy, and you don't want them barking in the kennel, I understand that. So they're not going to understand, well, it's okay to bark, at my feed bowl, but it's not okay to bark when nobody else is around. So, doing it in the pen, I guess, is not a good idea. But for me, and there may be arguments out there, I believe encouraging puppies to bark at a young age is a good thing, especially in a breed like a hound where you do want them to open on track and on tree. Well,
I believe it too.
Yeah. Well, we tried another little thing to try to make her a little bit envious of what Clyde was doing, and that was by tying her back, right?
Yeah, and I done that. And Steve, I'll tell you something else too that completely blew my mind that happened last night, actually, that I haven't even told you about yet. And this sort of goes back to Clyde and being smart, like I was telling you, and Bonnie and progressing and being vocal. Last night, my wife came to the house and she said, Bonnie is down there barking. I don't know what she's barking at. And I walked to the window. And, I mean, you should have heard her. She sounded a treat. I mean, just every breath. Well, I walked down the stairs, and I got my light. And I was just going to step out the door and get her to hush. And I turned my light off. Or I turned my light on, and there was a coon down here about 15 foot in front of the dog kennel eating wet dog food that I'd sprayed out. And she's going crazy over that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get on to her or nothing. I sort of ran that coon off, and she barked about 20 minutes. And she finally quit. And, Clyde never barked a bark. And, I think it's smart. I mean, on Bonnie's part, she's learning. I mean, I'm proud of her for that. But on Clyde's part, I'm proud of him too. I mean, he's got a switch. He knows when it's time and when it's not.
Yeah.
That's just like my wife sent me that picture before Bonnie got here of a coon sticking his hands through and eating dog food in the daytime out of Clyde's bowl. And him just sitting there watching it. And not barking. I mean, that's got to be brains. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it is, and it's brains in both departments there. Now with Bonnie, I think that as we talk about, that switch is flipped with her.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what's been killing both of us. The fact that she's been in heat for the last 3 weeks is because we know that it's flipped, and we just can't wait to see what the next stage is going to be with her, because this was a pup that showed absolutely no interest in a coon to begin with, and has progressed to this point through some luck, I guess, and also through some steps. And you and I have discussed it pretty much every step of the way.
And when you say no interest, I mean, she had no interest. I had picked a coon up that had been hit by a car, and any dog will mess with something like that. And she didn't even have no interest in that. I mean, just nothing. Nothing. When I first started taking her out, she was scared to death of cows. I don't understand that, but she was scared to death of cows. Now she'll blow right through a herd of cows and not look at them, not slow down a bit.
Yeah.
And she's come a long way.
Well, I think if there would be a theme for this podcast, and we've already talked almost an hour, about 40 seconds, we'll have an hour in. The theme of this thing for you out there that have invested in a nice pup, and or maybe raised it yourself, whatever. You've got this puppy. You want to take it down through the steps to become a coon dog. I think the overwhelming main point to our discussion is to have patience with these pups and give them opportunities to learn, and don't be heavy-handed with them. Now, again, Bonnie, I don't know, has she had a bark collar on at all?
Not since she's been here. I've never put one on her.
Right.
Neither one of these dogs out here have ever been shocked for anything.
There we go. Now, I know that's probably not going to do our friends at DU Hunting Supply any good as far as business, and I will take the opportunity to thank Buddy Woodbury and Jason Doobie and all the folks out at WU Hunting Supply for making this podcast possible each week. We couldn't do it without you fellas, and if you need anything in the way of hunting apparel, gear, whatever it is, you need it fixed, you need customer service on it. Kesten mentioned that I've sent in a T5 collar. We're going to trade up to the T5X for Bonnie. But anyway, those guys out there can sure fix you up, and they'll take care of you after the sale as well. But yeah, the thing that comes to mind here is you don't have to have a heavy hand. You don't have to make them ride the lightning, as some guys say. And I see this, and I want to thank guys like Heath Hyatt over there that's been preaching this gospel with his podcast and all about using these things sparingly. Yes, they're a tool, and they can be effective. And at some point, I know you and I've talked a little bit about Clyde occasionally wanting to stay at a hole. Now, when you hunt in the mountains, that's not such a great thing, is it, Kesten?
No, it's very aggravating. And, juice ain't all bad. Shocking them ain't all bad. It's just doing it right. You need to do it right. And if you don't know how to do it right, you need to talk to somebody that does know how to do it right. And that's the biggest reason for me not shocking them. I've never had a shocking system. I've never had I've never shocked a dog. And just me, I would rather not take a chance on messing one up, not knowing what I'm doing, than I would to just go out there shocking.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. They can be used for positive reinforcement. They can be a tremendous training aid. And, teaching the tone to the dog, the T15 collar, having that tone, a lot of times can assist you and speed the process of getting a good recall on that dog where, if he's getting near a road or onto property you don't want to be. Don't want him to be. So there's many, many positive aspects, but in the wrong hands, you can create problems that sometimes you can't overcome. So that's certainly a good point. Well, okay, we've talked about Bonnie and Clyde, two notorious outlaws in history. I think these guys are going to be pretty good citizens, and I can't wait over the next few weeks and months as the hunting seasons come in and all to hear how these two nice young dogs. And Bonnie, she had us scratching her head and doubting our methods, I'm sure, at times. But she's beginning to turn the corner now, too. All right. You asked me a while back about what I would prefer to do to go to either the Grand American Coon Hunt in Orangeburg, South Carolina, or go to Autumn Oaks out in Richmond, Indiana. Now, I believe I told you that I would want you to do both, but I told you to go to Autumn Oaks first, didn't I?
Yeah, that's right. You told me Autumn Oaks is the place to go.
What was your experience? Your first time ever to be at a big hunt, and you chose the granddaddy of them all. UKC's Autumn Oaks, been there since, actually started off in the state of Indiana, moved around a little bit, came back to Indiana in 1984, came to Richmond, Indiana, where it is in 1992, has been there ever since. What was your, maybe what were some of your thoughts before you got there that you thought it might be, and then how was it?
All right. Well, to start with, the only other big hunt I'd ever been to with vendors and stuff like that was the Walker Days, and it's a lot bigger than Walker Days. And before
Now
I
you're
went down,
talking about Southeastern Tree and Walker Days down at
yes,
Union, South Carolina, right?
yes,
Okay, I
yes,
just wanted to clarify that because there is also a UKC, the Tree Walker Breeders and Fanciers have their Walker Days. It's usually in Indiana, but anyway, go ahead.
all right. And before going down there, I told you I would like to go out on a cast, just experience it. You told me you'd set me up with somebody. And just from the social media stuff, watching some of this stuff, I'm thinking, well, there ain't nobody gonna take me hunting. Nobody knows me. I ain't gonna get to go hunting. And so anyhow, I went down there and I met you, and I was really surprised how friendly everybody was. I mean, you complete stranger, and they talk to you like they know you your whole life. And you set me up with Wayne Denny. I would have never guessed I'd ever went hunting with Wayne, but that was a great experience. He took me out on a cast, sort of really showed me what it was like. It's nothing like social media tries to make it sound. There was no arguing, no fighting, no bickering. They just hunted, called their dogs, and had a winner at the end of the hunt. And but I really enjoyed sitting in the media center with you, listening to the stories, listening to all the older guys talk. It was just great. Had a lot of fun.
Well, you saw got to do some shopping.
Yeah, yeah.
I jokingly on another podcast said that the vendors were having a real good day because every time I saw you, you were coming from the vendor's barn with something else.
Yeah, yeah. And it was great to get to see all these dogs that most people don't get to see. If you do get to see them, it's just a picture of them on Facebook or something. The Willie dog was there, the bone collector dog, all the money dogs. It was just a neat experience to get to see all that. And you got to meet Nevin Moore, your friend. Really thought a lot of him. Clayton Starr, the Houndtooth podcast guys. Got to meet them all.
Well, that's the thing about Autumn Oaks that makes it great. Just about everybody's there, and even a lot of the PKC hunters they're down the road at North Vernon, Indiana, for the Labor Day Classic, but they tend to come up to Autumn Oaks during the daytime, either to shop or just to get that Autumn Oaks flavor of all these coon hunters walking around that big fairgrounds. A lot of campers there, and of course, I told you, Kesten, Autumn Oaks is not quite back to what it was pre-COVID, but it is definitely improving and much better than it was 2 years ago. And then last year was kind of a comeback year, and now this year was even better. And I look forward to continue, to grow back to its former state. But it's just a place for people to go to get a coonhound experience at what I call the next level or the premium level. And
Yeah. And, it was honestly, it was a lot bigger than I expected it to be. I mean, just all the vendors, all the people. I didn't expect that many people. The campers camping. I didn't expect none of that.
yeah, well, that's part of Autumn Oaks. People like to come there and camp. They set up their camps, and in the evening after the dogs go out, of course, we kind of headed back to the hotel and get supper and all. Well, you hunted on Friday night, but and then of course Nubbin and I scooted out on you on Saturday night there to head back to Alabama. But anyway, that's all part of the experience that people look forward to year after year, and to make that National Grand Night Champion of the Year title is just something that's over the top good for whoever wins it. And I can remember I called it the event where history's made, and there's so many dogs' names that you recognize as being great dogs in history that earned that recognition, or at least part of it, by being at Autumn Oaks. So, well, I was glad you got to go, and it was a real trip for me to see you interacting. And the boys on the Hound Stew Podcast Network there, the Coon Hunting Confidential, they mentioned you in their episode this last week, and it was positive. They didn't say anything bad about you. So,
yeah, I really enjoyed talking to them. I talked to them there for a little while.
well, I want to give those guys a shout out. You know, I know back in the early days when Houndsman XP was the only game in town, you know, we kind of looked over our shoulder at people that were trying to put together a podcast, and we were kind of the innovators or the first ones for tree dogs. And so, you know, but now, man, there's several out there, and it's just so cool to see. And I'll be honest with you, you know, when I listen to podcasts, I love that podcast with Daniel and Dustin and Ryan. They're so doggone funny. Now, I'm kind of like Nubbin, you know. I'm not a total convert on some of those stories that their guests tell, you know. Some of them I'm like, whoa, I don't know if I can believe that or not. But at any rate, just the entertainment value of that podcast is high on my list, and I think you know it's become the one outside of the DU podcast that I hear. You know, I like that Coon Hunting Confidentials. It's a good time. So if you haven't checked it out, guys, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, and check them out. It's a fun time for sure. And I wanted to get those guys to sit down with me in the booth and let's do a short session, because I know it would have been entertaining. But we didn't get it done. But I'm going to make that a target for Grand American at the end of the year to try to get those guys all three on a podcast. It'd be a lot of fun. Well, what's your overall forecast for this coming hunting season? What do you think? Think you're going to have a lot of fun? You got plans? What's the next step?
I'd say I'll just keep on keeping on. Keep going to the woods, hunt 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week. Work sort of slows down in the wintertime, so that gives me even more time to hunt. And well, you know, I like to deer hunt too. And,
I'm hoping to get in on a little of that this year later on.
Yeah,
after my White River trip. So So get me one staked out there somewhere, would you? Just
I'll do it.
A nice easy one.
And basically from around Halloween until April, that's pretty much all I do is hunt. Work slows down, and hunting sort of, I don't know if it could pick up any more than what it already is, but it frees up a lot of time.
They're keeping you busy right now at this time of year, though, for sure, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, the main thing that changes, instead of getting to hunt, 2-3 hours a night, it'll be more hunt from dark to daylight type style.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've done your homework with these 2 young dogs. You got them. Timing couldn't be better. Hunting season's coming up, and I'm just looking forward to a whole lot of phone calls. And within about a week or so, I'm going to be up there checking your oil. I'm going to make sure if this is all hype or you telling me the truth about these.
Yeah, you have to come up and go again.
I'm certainly planning on doing that. I look forward to it. Kesten, have we missed anything that we should have talked about?
Not that I know of.
Well, are you going hunting tonight? Foolish question. But
definitely going tonight. I didn't get to go last night, so I'm definitely going tonight.
I see. Well, you told me earlier that when we recorded this, we kind of have a time limit here because you got your little girl's a cheerleader, I believe you told me, and you've got a
Yeah.
function to go to with her.
Yeah, we got to go get her cheer pictures taken, and then hunt tonight. My 1 day a week off was last night, I guess. So got to get back out there tonight, and hopefully do some good, and hopefully get that collar in the mail here soon and get Bonnie back in the woods. And,
Well, I can promise you those good folks, I sent a note, those good folks at DU Supply, they're going to get that thing to you so quick, you're just going to be totally surprised. So,
yeah.
Well, folks, it's been a great visit here today for me. I get to visit with this guy by phone just about every day because, and I think you can see why. This guy has the energy, the insight, the passion for our sport of coon hunting like nobody I've seen in a long time. I know that there's going to be a bright future for you, Kesten, in this sport as you continue on. I'm looking forward to a long relationship with you as we have this dog together, but at any rate, it's been really good to have you on the podcast, and I appreciate you for that, folks. I will tell you that the Gone to the Dogs hats are in. The trucker style hat, the mesh back. You either get the black with the gray back, a black front with the gray back, or the green front with a white back. And those are available at stevefielderbooks.com. The shipping is free. I also have copies of Gone to the Dogs, A Coon Hunter's Journey, the book that I wrote about my experiences over the years with coon hunting. And folks tell me that they enjoy it, and I'm sure you will too. And there again, it's available at stevefielderbooks.com. Well, that's going to be a wrap for our podcast for today, folks. And I wish you a great hunting season coming forward. The World Championship Finals are coming up for UKC, the Fall Super Stakes, and the PKC World Hunt, all coming right up. We'll try to report on some of those things as we go forward. But for now, if anybody asks you, where's Steve Fielder, where's that old coon hunter, you tell him he's gone to the dogs.